one can identify the independent variables and the dependent variable through that topic, even without somebody telling you. So it should be clear, it should be crisp, it should be not more than 12 words. You should be speaking to the point, and let all your scope be identified in the title. Then after the title page, you're going to have the declaration. What I'm mentioning is just the preliminary pages. The Roman 2. To whom are you going to declare your work? The supervisor. Then Roman 3, you're going to have a page on dedication. The research which you're going to carry out, whom are you going to dedicate it to? Is it your family? Is it your friends? Is it your class? Then the other page is the acknowledgement. Then acknowledge the people you want to acknowledge concerning your research. At least from the dedication, acknowledgement, those are your researcher's words. You can choose to whom you are going to dedicate. You can choose to whom you are going to acknowledge the work. Then have the table, the page of the table of content. Kindly try and automate it for the purposes of easier work. Then if any use of tables and figures, have a list of tables, have a list of figures. Then have a page on the abbreviation and acronyms. If you're going to talk about NTSA, tell us what do you mean by NTSA. If you're going to talk about KSG, Kenya School of Government, so that when one is reading through your document, when one is going through your research, whenever he or she comes across KSG, he knows that you mean is Kenya School of Government. Because once you fail to mention the acronyms and the abbreviation, whenever I come across an acronym, abbreviation like Kenya School of KSG, I wouldn't know you mean, maybe I think maybe you mean something else apart from KSG. So try and list it so that whenever I'm going through your research, we know you mean Kenya School of Government. So the work starts at the abstract. So in the abstract, there are 2 levels. There's the time when you're coming up with your proposal, the chapter 1, 2, and 3. And there's an abstract when you're coming up with the whole document or the whole full research from chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So when coming up with the abstract, in both cases, it depends with your supervisors. Some supervisors prefer when you're submitting your work, you come up with this abstract when you're doing the final research. Some supervisors prefer you walk along. When you're doing the proposal, have an abstract. When you're doing the full research, have another abstract. So basically, if you'll be going the both ways, the proposal abstract way or the full research abstract way, try and make that abstract brief. Let it be within 150 words to 250 words. The abstract is just maintaining from 150 words to 250 words. Let it be simple. It's a one paragraph page. You use different font. If the other document you're using 2.0, here you're using 1.0, single spaced. So that is a 1 paragraph. So if you're doing the proposal or if you're doing the full research, let your abstract be within those words. The 150 words to 250 words. Are we clear?
Yes.
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 Okay. Now once you do that, now we can talk about chapter 1. So chapter 1 starts with, of course, the title chapter 1 could be chapter 1, introduction and background of the study. So you can decide to either go the way I've written chapter 1 full colon, introduction and background of the study, or someone can do chapter 1 without the full colon, then enter. And definitely they'll be at the middle. So it can be anyhow, it can be like that, or it can be the way it was initially. So it is just a stylistic issue. There's no big deal. Both of them are right. So once you do your chapter 1, the heading, the introduction and background, then you do the 1.0, you do introduction. You can have 1.0, you do the introduction. It's something brief, it's just a paragraph. The first bit of it, you're trying to introduce the main area of the study. If your main area of the study, maybe for example, you can use a topic. You can use just a crude topic. You can use a crude topic. You can say effects of staff motivation on organization performance. A case of Kenya School of Government. That's but an example. That can be our topic to guide us through the discussion in this part. So once you've gone with the effects of staff motivation on organization performance, a case of Kenya School of Government. So in the introduction bit of it, you introduce just a slightly in a paragraph your main area, which is the staff motivation. Just a paragraph, just introduce what is staff motivation, then full stop. Then tell us what your chapter 1 is going to entail. So in a nutshell, your chapter 1 is going to entail from the 1.1 to all the way to 1.8. So you're going to list in a prose form. This chapter will entail background of the study, statement of the problem, like that, all the things you're going to discuss under chapter 1. Once you do that, you've done with the introduction. Go to 1.1, talk about the background of the study. I'm projecting, so kindly if someone will have a question, just ask, because where I'm projecting, I cannot be able to see if someone is raising their hand. Okay. Are we together?
Yes.
Yeah. So we are talking about now, after you're done with the introduction, go to 1.1, talk about the background of the study. In the background of the study, here we are doing it the inverted V. You are doing the inverted V. Let me see if I can do the inverted V. Here we are doing the inverted V. So it's like you're building that story. You want to demonstrate to us there are issues on the organization performance caused by staff motivation in the Kenyan context, which in this case is Kenya School of Government. But before you reach there, you need to introduce this case in the global perspective. So take us through what has been said in the global perspective concerning the staff motivation and organization performance. Take us through what has been said in the regional perspective you're talking about your main area, which is the staff motivation. So tell us what has been said in the global perspective. Could be in the US, could be in the UK, could be 2 paragraphs, could be 3. Then go to the next, talk about what has been said concerning staff motivation, in this case, in the regional perspective. Could be in cases to do in Ghana, cases to do in South Africa. Then come and demonstrate and come and tell us what has been said concerning the African perspective. The African perspective, in this case, let us put Eastern Central Africa. Could be 2 paragraphs again, could be 3. Then come and tell us now what has been said concerning this matter, the local perspective. Now your Kenyan perspective. It is like a story, you're building this story. You're talking about it in the global perspective, introduce it in the regional perspective, talk through about in the African perspective, then talk through about in the local perspective. And we're starting with the local perspective. Don't just run straight to Kenya School of Government. No, give some of these instances. Could be county, for example, instances, could be other institution instances, so that you single down to now Kenya School of Government, because that is your main scope of your area. Now, when you're discussing this background, you can go with the way it has been gone, like 1.1, introducing the background. Then somebody could be discussing the regional, global, African, local in a paragraph. That's fine and good. Someone else could be introducing, maybe talking when he or she is talking about, when that group is talking about the global, they introduce 1.1.1 global, they discuss. When they come to regional again, they do 1.1.2. African 1.1.3, local 1.1.4. All of it are okay. They're agreeable. If you're discussing in a prose form, well and good. But let those cases come out. If you're talking about global, let it come out clearly it's global. If you're talking about regional, let it come out clearly. Once you've done until the local perspective, now your Kenyan perspective, now you can come, before you go to the statement of the problem, you can come and introduce what? Now you can come and introduce organization performance. You can now introduce, you can talk about organization performance. So with that, you're now clearly done with the background of the study. That's why we're calling it an inverted V. Because you want to demonstrate this case is not just here. It is a global case. It's a global scenario. It's a regional scenario. That's why we are doing this study. So once you do that, now we can talk to 1.2, statement of the problem. In the statement of the problem is something. Is there a question? When you're talking about statement of the problem, it's something brief. If you're going beyond 1 page, make it 1 page and even a half is too much. Make it 1 page and a quarter. Talk to the point. A good statement of the problem can be even 1 page or 3/4 of a page. Make sure your first paragraph, don't talk to us too many stories. Let your first paragraph demonstrate what the problem is. Sometimes you'll find a group having 4 or 5 paragraphs. When you're going to read the 6th paragraph is when you're seeing the problem. That's not the good way to go. The good way to go is your first paragraph has to demonstrate that problem. Someone will ask, how does it demonstrate? You can demonstrate in terms of quantifying the problem, in terms of using statistics, could be using frequency, trying to quantify, so that when one person is reading that particular paragraph, he or she can identify with the problem. For example, for instance, in the same case in the organization performance at KSG, maybe you could say in 2017, the organization. Let's mute our mic. Kindly let's mute our microphones. Yes, Florence, I've seen your hand up.
Sorry, I think it's a mistake.
Okay. Yes, sir. For example, you could say in terms of the organizational performance, you could say maybe in 2017, the organizational performance at Kenya School of Government, maybe it was at some certain level. Maybe let's say something to do with maybe 90%. Just find a way to how to demonstrate it. Then I'll say maybe in 2021, the organizational performance is at 70%. So somebody can really identify saying it was at this percentage at this particular time you are in, the percentage in terms of performance at that in this organization has escalated down. Try to bring that problem in the first paragraph. There are so many ways of how to demonstrate this problem, but let that problem come crisply in first paragraph, so that in your second paragraph, you're backing that story using literature. You can back it again in the third paragraph, so that in the last paragraph, you're trying to tell us, why are we concerned with your study? It's like you're answering, why are you doing this study? How your study is going to address this problem. Looking at what? Now this area you're looking at. Again, don't go beyond 1.5 pages. If you're going beyond 1 page, make it 1.25 page. Let that problem come out clearly. Just as simple as that. Don't go to too many stories. This is the problem. Demonstrate how it is a problem. Back it to the theory, back it to the literature, back it to the literature. Then tell us how your study is coming to address this issue. Then you can have the 1.3 now, talk about the general objectives. And when you're mentioning the general objective, remember the general objective is the replica of your topic, the exact, just to add the adverb in front of that topic to make it a sentence. How do I mean? Let me delete this. If you're talking about your objective, you just come and pick how your topic is, the exactly where your topic is. Come and paste it and make it into a sentence case. So just add the word, the adverb in front. Just like that. That qualifies to be a general objective. Our topic was effects of staff motivation on organizational performance, a case of KSG. Then our general objective in this case will be to determine, for example, to determine the effects of staff motivation on organizational performance, a case of KSG. Your general objective is the replica of your topic. Cut and paste, add the adverb in front of it. Then talk to us about your specific objectives. In this case, because of time, just go with 3. But if a group feels they can do 4 within this short period of time, well and good. But you advise just do at least 3. Don't go below 3. 2 is not acceptable. For now, someone will ask, then how do we come up with specific objectives? When I'll be mentioning about the conceptual framework, all these things, you'll replicate it here. But for now, after the 1.3, the general objective, talk through about the specific objective. I know I already assigned you into groups, into teams. So after today, I'll expect a 3-page or a 2-page concept note before we progress. And in the concept note, the first page I'll want to see is the topic. The other item I'll want to see is the objectives. And the other item I want to see, crucially, it is the conceptual framework. Someone will ask, why are we introducing conceptual framework at an early stage like this? Because once you've decided this is the topic, of course, you've done something like a background check behind it. And you've understood like these are the variables which have not been studied too much. Then this is the gap that I'm looking at these variables. Once you know that, when you come up with a detailed conceptual framework, that conceptual framework is the whole study. It is from that conceptual framework that your objective, specific objective, you'll draw from. It is from the conceptual framework that your literature review in terms of theoretical, in terms of empirical. It is from the conceptual framework that your research methodology will be drawn from. It is from the conceptual framework that your questionnaire will be drawn from. That's why we insist on the conceptual framework, because when you get it right at that planning stage, then everything else falls into place easily. That's why I usually say use the 80% rule to 20%. There's a style of coming up with a conceptual framework, the APA style. You need to draw it practically. This is an example of one. You can find a study going with 3 boxes or 2 boxes. The farthest left, this is your independent variables. These were dependent variables. Then these were independent variables. You find some of these going with what? Going with the intervening variables. It's not a must, but some of the topics sometimes could go with the intervening variables, or sometimes called the moderating variables. Just want to make it practical so that the point gets home. So you need to link what to what. So in a nutshell, it's called dependent variable because it depends. For it to work, for you to achieve organizational performance in this case, there has to have some variables. Those variables, they have to be there for you to achieve what? Organizational performance. So for instance, our dependent variable in this case will be what? Organization performance, OP. But don't write initial, just write in full. Because of demonstration, I'll use initial. So your dependent variable in this case, in our topic effect of staff motivation and organizational performance, your dependent variable in this case will be organization performance. Then your dependent variables, your independent variable in this case is your main area of study, which is now the staff motivation. Before even this box comes, the intervening variable, work between the two first. Then ask yourself, when I talk about organization performance, what are the variables I'm looking at to measure this organization performance? And list, come up with 3 variables. When you come to your organization, for you to say the organization has performed well this financial year, what are the variables you're looking at? Like for instance, for Kenya School of Government, we look at the increased number of clients. If maybe last financial year we had 200 clients, this financial year we have 300. We are looking at that margin. We can be looking at issues to do with productivity. We could look at issues to do with revenue. So you need to know. So what are the sum of this? And try and make your variables smarter. You all know the acronyms, smarter. Let them be specific. Let them be measurable. Let them be accurate. Let them be realistic. Let them be time-bound. Don't just mention a variable because you want to mention. No, ask yourself, can you measure it? Like the number of clients you can measure is coming from 200 to 250. Come up with 3 variables into dependent variables. Then you talk about now your what? Your staff motivation being the main area of your study. Because you've gone through literature. You've seen whatever the other researchers have talked about concerning staff motivation and organizational performance. Which are these variables they were looking at? You'll find whatever you're trying to discuss, some of these variables which you want to demonstrate, they have not been researched upon. Now list those variables. List those variables. Could be what? Could be maybe in form of policies. I want to show you something. Could be maybe 1 in form of policies. 2 could be in form of rewards. 3 could be in form of what? Maybe approaches. For instance. So because we've said your conceptual framework, it is the main research. It is from the conceptual framework that all the research elements are drawn from. Then you need to make it crisper. How do you make it crisper? You'll have to distinguish these 3 into different boxes. Bearing in mind, it is from this conceptual framework that the questionnaire will be drawn from. So someone will have to ask yourself, When you're talking about policies, what do you mean? What are the variables you're going to measure under what? What are the variables you're going to measure under policies? Is it training? Is it promotion? Talk through, have 3. Then go to rewards. Under rewards, what are these variables you're going to measure? Come up with measurable 3 variables again. Then go to approaches in this sense, for instance. Then come up with 3. Then once you've done that, you've exhausted your independent variables. You've exhaustively done what? Deal with the what? Dependent variables. Now, you can now ask yourself, do we have anything opposing for us to achieve our organizational performance? The intervening variables in this case is you are setting right your staff motivation variables. When you set it right, at the end of it all, you'll achieve what? Your organizational performance in terms of maybe increasing number of clients, in terms of productivity, in terms of increase in revenue. That is the plan you have as an organization. So you're asking yourself, do we have anything like a policy, like a manual, like a gazette notice that could be working against our variables to achieve our main target, which is the organizational performance? If there is when now you introduce what? The intervening variables. For instance, you in your department at Kenya School of Government, you've planned that in each quarter, you want to train maybe 5 employees in each quarter abroad. Then you've said, because you want to train them abroad, when you train these 5 employees, at the end of it all, it will improve the organizational performance in KSG, maybe in terms of revenue, in terms of productivity, in terms of performance, in terms of number of clients going up. That is what you've planned. But maybe there's a government policy or a government regulation stating and saying each government institution in each and every quarter has to train a maximum of 2 people outside the country. You had the notion of training 5 people, 5 staffs, 5 employees. But there is a policy working behind you, working against your plan, telling you need to train a maximum of only 2 staff per quarter abroad. That factor is working against you. It is controlling for you to achieve the organization. Something is working in between. That is what we refer to as intervening variable or moderating variable. So sometimes you'll find some studies, they lack the intervening variables. That's well and good. But most of the studies will find there's a factor working in between you achieving your set goals because of this and this. So you list. And when coming up with these intervening variables, just have one umbrella name, like the government policies. Then you can list maybe 1 or 2, which are these government policies. Are they HR manuals? Are they financial policies? Just simple as that. Because it is from this detailed conceptual framework that all your study will be taken care of. Speaking to that, now when coming to craft your specific objective, there are 2 ways to craft these objectives. The first option, you can craft these objectives in each, having one specific objective in independent, another one in dependent, another one in intervening. For instance, option 1 is like this. You can have objective 1. You can just say the way it is. To determine the effects of staff motivation on organization performance. Specific objective 2 could be to examine the variables, measures of organization performance at Kenya School of Government. Specific objective 3 could be to examine or even to influence the intervening variables of the government policies vis-a-vis now the 2 dependent and independent variables. That is option 1. Option 2, in coming up with these specific objectives, you are rendering all your 3 specific objectives in your main area of study. And what are your main area of study? are these independent variables. So you'll have specific objective 1, speaking to policy, to determine the influence of policy on organization performance. Specific objective 2, to determine or to examine the influence or the effect of reward on organization performance. Specific objective 3, maybe to examine or determine it, whichever word you're going to use, the influence of approaches on organizational performance at Kenya School of Government. So those are the 2 options. All the options are right. No option is better than the other. But for me, I usually tell my participant, work with the independent variables, because the independent variables are the main area of your study. This is where the problem is. This is what you want to address at the end of it all. Your recommendation are going to come from the 3. But anyhow you come up with it, if option 1 or option 2, all are the same. Then 1.4, it is the research question. So transform the 3. Don't mention anything to do the general objective. Just mention something, the three specific objectives, transform them into questions. For instance, you had to determine the effect of policy on organization performance. So I forgot to mention, to avoid repetition, let only the general objective have the issue of the case of Kenya School of Government. When you're talking about the specific, you can neglect, just reach at the performance. Maybe your topic will be now effect of staff motivation on organizational performance in the public sector, a case of Kenya School of Government. So when you talk about specific, it will be now to examine the effect of policy on organizational performance in the Kenyan public sector. Avoid the word a case of KSG. Let just a case of KSG appear in the topic and the general objective only, to avoid repetition. So our first specific objective in that case was to determine or to examine the effect of policy on organization performance in the public sector. So when you're transforming that objective into question, will be, what is the influence? What are the influences of policy on organizational performance in the public sector in Kenya? Just transform them into question, as simple as that. Then mention 1.5, talk something about what? The significance of the study. Who can tell me the difference between significance of the study and justification of the study? Any trial? Peter, yes? Peter, the floor is yours.
Which Peter? Is it Washira?
Yeah, Washira. Peter Washira.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I would think the justification is more of the problem. How far you are, I mean, maybe future looking, I mean, backward looking. But significance would be involved maybe forward looking. And could be the instance we are going to use the study going forward. That would be my small differentiation. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good trial. Yeah, in justification, let me start with significance. Significance is basically you're trying to tell us who your beneficiary of this study are going to be. Which group of people are going to benefit from your study? Is it the academicians? Is it the HR? For instance, like our topic, is it the HR department, the HR manager? Is it the top management of Kenya School of Government? Is it the government of Kenya? So in a nutshell, you're trying to tell us, when you're doing this research, these are the group who are going to be beneficiaries of the new knowledge gained through this research. Then you're talking about justification. That justification is like you're answering the questions, why are you doing this research? The answer to why you are doing this research, that qualifies to be the justification. So those are the two differences between the two terms. Significance is the beneficiaries who are going to benefit from this new knowledge you're going to gather. The justification is answering the question, why? Why are you doing this effective? The effect of staff motivation on organizational performance. Then once you do that, go to 1.7. Go to 1.7, talk about the limitation. Talk about the limitation of the study and the limitation. So it's supposed to be When you talk about limitation, it's about to be limitation and delimitation of the study. So it's supposed to be limitation and delimitation of the study. Let me throw some spanner in the works. When you're doing a proposal, when you're doing your chapter 1, 2, and 3, go silent on that 1.7 for now. Someone will ask why. To avoid contradicting your own self. Sometimes I've experienced when participants are working in chapter 1, 2, and 3 and they mention about limitation, someone will tell you there were issues to do with the language barrier. There were issues to do with financial constraint. So until you ask the group, how did you know there will be issues to do the language barrier? Because when you're doing your chapter 1, 2, and 3, you've not gone to the field yet. It's until you've gone to the field, the actual data collection is when some of these limitations and the challenges that are going to be experienced. So avoid trying to futuristic, trying to think there'll be this and these issues in the field. That's why sometimes you'll find in most of the universities, the limitation and delimitation come in chapter 5, the last thing in chapter 5. But here at the Kenya School of Government, we report it at 1.7. But when you're doing a proposal, go silent on it. Capture it when you're doing the final research. Because once you go to the field, is when now you'll discover these are the challenges which you went through. There's the issue of the language barrier. There's the issue of the financial constraint. There's the issue of the time consuming. Then how are you able to overcome all these challenges? The issue of the delimitation. So you're telling us this was the limitation. This is how you delimit that challenge and that particular issue. Then talk about what? Talk about the scope. Talk about the scope of the study. Your 1.8. Where is your study going to take place? Who are your respondents? Who are your target respondents? Just as simple as that. A one paragraph. Then 1.9, define your what? Define all your key terms. Your key terms are now, for instance, in our case, could be staff motivation. Define staff motivation. Define organization performance. And any other key term you used. Because you want, when somebody is reading through your document, when someone comes through the word staff motivation, they understand at the level you, the researcher, is writing at. Sometimes I could be thinking staff motivation means something different. So when I'm reading through a document, I find too much of contradiction. So to avoid all those things, make sure, define the way you want it to be understood throughout the document. When you're talking about staff motivation, when you're talking about policy, you want somebody to understand policy in this and this regard. When you're talking about reward, I want the person reading my document or my research to understand reward in this and this style, so that to avoid the issue of contradiction. Once you do that, send to your supervisor, let your supervisor approve, give forward moves. If there's any amendments, amend on those corrections, then you can proceed to chapter 2. So in chapter 2, again, do it the same way. The chapter 2, literature review, or chapter 2, enter literature review. Any style is accepted. Any style is accepted. It'll be that way. Then do the 2.1, do the introduction. Introduce what is going to be taught, what is going to be mentioned in this chapter 2. And what is going to be mentioned is from the 2.2 all the way to the last thing we're going to talk about in chapter 2. Then do the 2.2, do the theoretical framework. First of all, define what is theoretical framework. Then tell us which are these theories you're going to discuss. Could be 2 theories or 3 theories. When I'll be finishing the format, I'll be showing you how many words we expected to come up with, so that you decide if your document is too wordy, go with 2 theories. If your document are short of words, then go with 3 theories. So come up with 3 theories. There's the issue of micro and macro in dealing with the theories. The macro is more of general. You could come up with theory specific. You could come up with theory generally speaking to the area of your topic. Just something to mention with the staff motivation, something to mention with the organizational performance. Or you could come up with theory specifically speaking to your topic. And if it's specifically speaking to your topic, could be 3 theories touching on the 3 independent variables which you had: the policy, the reward, and the approaches. So there's 2 options that are still right. It's up to the groups to decide which are we going with. So for instance, you could look at what, like one, for example, issue to do the reward, talk about the Maslow's. Then just mention the first paragraph when you're talking about the Maslow's. Tell us who propounded the theory of Maslow's. Then tell us what the Maslow's means. Then to link it to your study, the last paragraph, there is when it is the researcher's voice which comes into play. In the last paragraph of each and every theory you're going to use, tell us how is this theory relevant to your topic. Is it relevant in terms of specifically speaking to these variables, or is it relevant in the sense that it's generally speaking to this topic? That needs to be clearly captured. Once you do that, of course, you're coming with 3 or 2. Once you do that, now do what? Do the empirical literature. Again, when you're doing the empirical literature, do it the same way you did the background. Do the inverted V again. What did this researcher say concerning staff motivation in the US? Remember, when you're doing the background, is you just introducing the staff motivation. But when you're talking about empirical literature, is you're linking now the staff motivation to organizational performance. What was it said in the UK? What was it said in the Africa? What was it said in the regional? What has it been said, if ever been done in the Kenyan context? Do the inverted V kind of an argument. So once you do that, go to 2.4, the conceptual framework. The beauty of having it first, you already had it. So you just come and cut and paste here. Then discuss this figure. Tell us this is the conceptual framework. It entails staff motivation. And under staff motivation, these are the variables. Under organizational performance, these are the variables. If you're going with the intervening or moderating variables, these are the variables. Then you can find another group which is still accepted. Another group could be going to, after the 2.4, the conceptual framework. Another group could be the 2.5, but they're mentioning something to do with the critiquing of the literature review. Someone will be looking at now the empirical literature which has been discussed and critique it. After now the critiquing of the literature review, someone will go ahead and do what? The research gap. Now telling us, through these many researches which has been done, like Mulama in 2020, looked at the effect of staff motivation on organizational performance. But maybe in my case, I paid attention, I focus on private sector. The gap is coming into play because you are going to focus on what? Public sector. Maybe in terms of the variables, they looked at different. Maybe they looked at leadership. Maybe they looked at policies. Maybe they look at something different. But in your place, you're coming to look at these other variables. So you're demonstrating like these are the gaps. And this is what my research is coming into play to do to address these gaps. Then do your summary. In a paragraph, summarize what you have been doing from the 2.2 all the way to 2.4, or if you're going to the research gaps or critique 2.7. Then once you do that, submit to your supervisors. Let your supervisor have a look. If there is an amendment, you work on it so that he can give you a go-ahead to go to chapter 3. We are avoiding for you to do the whole thing. Then you send to your supervisor. Then your supervisor tells you have done nothing. You need to start from square one. We want you to save you that trouble. We want you to work with him or with her. Once you are done with one chapter, let them give you inputs so that when you're going to the next chapter, they understand what you're writing. And they're in agreement and they're in sync with what you're writing to be in an agreeable position. Rather than just doing it 1, 2, and 3. Then once you submit to the supervisor, they tell you, my friend, whatever you have done, you need to really go back to the drawing board. Now, once your supervisors accepted the work and give the approval to the go ahead of the next chapter, now you can do your chapter 3. The same way, you can just write it chapter 3 full colon research method, or the other way, all are still accepted, or the other way, you center it, all are still accepted. Then you're going to see how you're going to do chapter 3. It's going to be slightly different from the 2 chapters. So again, you start with 3.1. Why are we doing the introduction? We're doing the introduction because it is a story. It's like you're telling, you're giving somebody a story. You're telling him how you woke up. You want him or her to understand. After you woke up, what are the things you did? You went to the bathroom and showered. You brushed your teeth. You took breakfast. That's what you're trying to do. Rather than you're telling somebody a story, then you tell that somebody, I woke up. Then after a few seconds, you're telling that person, I'm sitting at the office desk. So they don't understand what are the things you did before you sat at your office desk. What are the procedures you went through? So while you're doing the introduction, it's like you're walking with that person. So when that person is reading into your introduction, he or she will understand, then these are the things you're going to look at. You're not just jumping, pop, in the research design. No, they already understand from the introduction. Now we're going to start with this. These are the things, these are the elements you're going to look at, you're going to discuss. That's why the importance of doing what? The introduction. So in the 3.1, introduce what your chapter is going to look at. Your chapter is going to look at what you're going to discuss. The 3.2 all the way down. Then now start the 3.2, talk about what? Talk about the research design. I said you're going to do it different because in this chapter, you're going to define each and every term before you start discussing it. So when you're in the 3.2 and talk about the research design, first of all, define what is meant by research design. Define it. Let us understand, what do you mean by research design? Then, as you all know, we have a lot of research designs around. There's a book of Mugenda. He talked about longitudinal. He talked about case study. He talked about census. He talked about causal. He talked about cross-sectional. He talked about mixed method. He talked about descriptive. He talked about qualitative. He talked about quantitative. There are a lot of research designs. So amongst all these research design, go through and decide which one is directly linked to your area. Then now tell us, for instance, you've already defined what is the research design, full stop. Then you tell us the research design which your research is going to use descriptive research design, full stop. Then justify why descriptive. Why are you going with this one amongst the 12 or 13 we have? It's like you're giving justification. For instance, you could say the research is going with descriptive because in descriptive research design, it takes care of both qualitative and quantitative. So if I have a questionnaire which addresses both qualitative, which is the structured, and the quantitative, which is the unstructured, then everything else is taken care of. It's like you're justifying why. Maybe you're going with cross-sectional. Then you justify why cross-sectional. You tell us this study is going to use cross-sectional because the matter of the area we are looking at, the matter of area, it is looked at in this span of time. It is mixed method because of A, B, C. It's like you're justifying, you're defending why you choosing this research design over the other research design which we have into play. Then do the 3.3, the study site. Tell us where your study site is going to take place. Like for instance, our topic, our study site is going to be at what? Kenya School of Government. Where is your study site going to be? Is it at the NTSA? Is it at the county government? Tell us. Then go to 3.4, target population. See how it plays in the target population. Under the target population, first of all, start by defining your population. Define the word population. Leave alone the target. Define the word population. what is it meant by population? Full stop. Then tell us what your population is or who your population is. For instance, after you've defined the word population, in our case, you can say our population of this study will be all the employees of Kenya School of Government. Bearing in mind, maybe you have how many campuses? We have 5 campuses. So that is your target, that is your population, full stop. Then now tell us who your target population in this research or in this study will be. For instance, our target population in this study will be Kenya School of Government, Lower Kabete staff. Your population is the bigger picture. Your population could be the entire public sector service, public sector employees. But your target population, the specific, the people who you're going to now sample. Your population could be the entire public service in the country. Your specific, which is your target population, could be the employees of what? KRA. Could be the employees of what? Judiciary. Could be the employees of what? This and this particular place. Because the target population is the population which now you're interested in looking at. Why are you mentioning about the population? You're mentioning about the population because whatever findings, whatever conclusion, whatever recommendation you're going to draw from the target population, you're going to generalize it to the population. That's why you have to choose a heterogeneous kind of a population. So that when you're coming up with in terms of analysis, when you're coming up with conclusion, recommendation, policy implication, you can simply generalizing to all the total population you're looking at. If you're looking at the public service, then your case is Kenya School of Government. So whatever findings you're going to get from that study, you can still link it to the all public sector. Then come to 3.5, sample size. Define what is sample size. You see, it is 3.5 sample size and 3.6 sampling procedure. So even before you work on the sample size, come and work on the sampling procedure first, because it is from the sampling procedure that will lead you to have a sample size. So work with the 3.6 first. Define what is sample procedure. Tell us how many sampling procedure do we have? We have 2. We have the probability and we have the non-probability. Under probability, we have what? We have the simple random sample. We have the cluster. We have the stratified. We have the multi. Under the non-probability, which one do we have? We have the convenience sampling. We have the purposive sampling. We have the quarter sampling. We have the snowballing sampling. So between the two, tell us which your study is going to use. Is your study going to use probability or non-probability? If it's probability, which type of probability sampling is your study is going to use? Why? Like you're justifying. Why are you choosing this technique compared to the other one? Then if you're talking about probability and if maybe you're going with the stratified, or maybe you're going with the cluster, or maybe you're going with the simple random, then give us a calculation of now coming up with the what? With the sample size. What am I saying? When coming up with a sample calculation, let's all the group, let's all avoid the use of Mugenda saying 10% to 30% of the total population. Kindly, let's avoid that. Let's look for statistical calculation formula. Why am I saying that? Let's just use an example here. Let's just do like an example in this case. Mugenda said, in coming up with a sample size, you can choose anything between 10% to what? To 30%. That is what Mugenda said. But let's say, for instance, your total population in this matter, you're having how many? You're having maybe 50. Maybe your N in this case, your N is 50. Your N in this case is 50. Then because Mugenda told you, you can use between 10% to 30%, then that group decide, let us use what? Let us use 10%. So what is 10%? Or let us use 20%. What is 20% of 50? It is 25. Ama ni ngapi? $25 or 10? It is 10. It is 10. So our target, our sample in this matter, our sample in this case will be 10. Going with what Mugenda said, use anything between 10 to 30%. Our N in this case, our target population was 50. Then you're doing your sample, you decided let's use 20% because he said play within. Could be 10.5, could be 20. So any percent is agreeable. Then you've gone with 20%. Then the 20% of 50, you get it is 10, maybe 10 staff or 10 employees, 10 respondents. So these are your sample. These are the people who you're going to interview. Bearing in mind, in research, there are few instances where any group will get 100% response rate. Not unless you sit under a tree. Not unless you cook that data. It is in minimal circumstances that a group, beat here at KSG, beat the academic one which you're doing in our master's, in our doctorate, in our undergraduate. There are minimal circumstances where a particular person will respond and say there are 100% response rate. I'm not saying it is not doable. It is doable, but it's in a minimal circumstances. So let's say, for instance, out of these 10 particular people who you are interviewing, maybe 7 filled the questionnaire. So the people who filled the questionnaire were 7 respondents. There were 7 respondents. These are the people who did what? Who fill and return the questionnaire. This is what Mugenda said, right? Then Mugenda himself again said, in terms of analysis, if someone can skim through, if you look at the chapter 4, which I'm highlighting red, not all of that, only this, only the response rate, which I've highlighted red. When you're going to that part in chapter 4, the same person Mugenda said, for your research to be accepted in terms of the analysis and the interpretation, anything above 50% in terms of the response rate, it is average. Anything above 60% in terms of the response rate, it is good. Anything above 70% in terms of your response rate, it is excellent. But anything below 50% in terms of your respondent, it is poor. Nothing will be accepted in terms of analysis, in terms of finding, because that population is not representative. So let's say, for instance, you did this. You use Mugenda. Is the one saying anything below 50 is not acceptable, but is the one who gave the 10 to 30%. Now you have what? The 7 people have already filled and returned the questionnaire. Could somebody do what is 7 out of 50? What is the percentage of 7 out of 50? Is it anything near 50%? It is way beyond 50%. It's way lower, less than, could be even less than even 20%. Why? Why am I saying we avoid this? Because his formula of 10% to 30% has not taken into consideration the things to do with what? The things to do with sampling errors. Has not taken into consideration the things to do with probability errors. That's why you'll find this, when you come into the response rate, will be rejected because it is below 50%. It is not representative enough. But when you use formulas, we have a lot of good formulas. You need to research. We have a lot of good formulas. We have people to do like the crunchback. We have nice formulas. We have the Tepler, Yamen. We have nice formulas, which their formulas, they've already taken care of what? The probability errors and the sampling errors. Because once you use those formulas, like the crunchback formulas, They are men's formulas. Those formulas, they've already taken care of sampling errors. They've already taken care of probability errors. So when calculating the sample size, you'll find the sample size, they're still within the target population you're looking at. So even if, let's say, less than 15 people didn't respond to your questionnaires, when you still come to the response rate, you'll find yourself above 50%. So in coming up with the sample size, try to use the statistical formula. Avoid this mugenda 10 to 30%, because this will not lead you anywhere. It will lead you somewhere, but when coming to the response rate, your work will not be accepted. It means you've done a zero work. Then when you've agreed which formula you're going to use, the sample size you've come up with, now you can go and fill what? The 3.5, the sample size. First of all, introduce what do you mean by sample size. Then tell us the sample size your study is going to look at. Then now come and do the 3.7, the data collection method. Again, define what's data collection method. As you all know, we have two types of data collection methods. There's the primary and the secondary. Tell us what you mean by the primary and the secondary. Between the two, which one are you going with? Primary. When you talk about primary, we have a lot of primary data collection methods. We have the interviews, we have the focus group discussion, we have the questionnaires, we have the key II. So amongst all these data collection primary, which one are you going with? Maybe for instance, you're going with the questionnaire. Then tell us, in the questionnaire, we have two types of questionnaire. We have the structured and you have the unstructured. Which one are you going to use? Or are you going to use both? Then now come to mention about the 3.9, the data collection, the 3.8, sorry, the data collection procedure. Because here you've decided you're going with the questionnaire. Now tell us how that procedure is going to be taken into consideration. Is it going to be a self-administered questionnaire? Sorry. Is it going to be a self-administered questionnaire? Is it going to be an online one? Is it going to be a face-to-face one? That is what we mean by procedure. Tell us how this questionnaire is going to be filled. Is it going to be a telephone interview one questionnaire? So all those things are being mentioned under the 3.8 data collection procedure. Then come to 3.9, data analysis and presentation. Data analysis and presentation. The same way you have been doing this 3.8 going to 3.1, define what is data analysis. Then tell us how you're going to analyze your data. Sometimes you'll find somebody telling you, I'm going to analyze my data in form of charts, tables, and figures. That is not analysis, that is presentation. Tell us how you're going to analyze your data. Bearing in mind, there are two analyses. We have descriptive analysis, we have inferential analysis. Which is the group going with? The descriptive, simpler, or the inferential, in-depth one? Depending on the time, you are free to choose. So for instance, you're going with the descriptive. Now tell us, this data is going to be analyzed in form of descriptive statistics. And you're going to use these softwares, maybe SPSS version 23. Maybe you're going to use Excel. Maybe you're going to use NVivo. Tell us. That is how you're going to analyze. Full stop. Then tell us how you're going to present your data. Now, this data is going to be presented in form of tables, in form of charts, in form of figures, in form of frequencies, in form of percentage. Now, that is presentation. You need to distinguish between the two. How you're going to analyze this data and how you're going to do what? To present the data. Then do the 3.0, the ethical consideration. Then define what is the ethical consideration. Then under ethical consideration, we have a lot of ethical consideration looking at. Tell us, amongst all these many ones we have, which one is your research, which one is your study paying attention to? Is it confidentiality? Is it privacy? Is it anonymity? Is it letter of consent? What is your research paying attention to? Once you do that, you can send to your supervisor waiting for feedback, or you can work on the questionnaire. You can work on the questionnaire. It depends with the supervisor and concerning with the time you'll be using in writing. So coming up with a questionnaire is easy. That's why we say when you have a detailed conceptual framework, every other thing will be into place, because you'll be knowing if you're to ask a question regarding staff motivation under policy, then these are the questions you're going to ask. Question on training, question on promotion, question on the other variables you had. If you're asking question regarding organizational performance, then these are the variables. Now you transform them and convert them into questions which you're going to ask. Number of clients, revenue, performance. So that's what I say, have a detailed conceptual framework, because from this conceptual framework, it will make your work easier. So even coming up with a questionnaire, this instance, you'll have a questionnaire in less than 10 minutes. But if you didn't have a proper detailed conceptual framework, it is at this point then you start cracking your head, asking yourself, so under now these independent variables, which are these questions supposed to ask? Again, it will take you a number of days, even sometimes weeks. But when you have a detailed conceptual framework at this initial planning phase, every other thing will play into place and will be simple in crafting. So that's what I'm emphasizing, to have that conceptual framework before you kickstart. So with that, I think chapter 4 and 5, we'll tackle it another day. I want to finish from the proposal, from the 1, 2, and 3. But I'll share this format with you just to look at it when moving forward. But once you're done, you're done with the chapter 3, and chapter 4 is there a bit of analysis, presentation, and interpretation. So here you just come and do the response rate which you are talking about. Then you come and analyze your sample profile, because in every questionnaire you need to have the sample profile, the age, the gender, the years, which are relevant to your area of study. Not all are relevant, which you think are relevant. Then come and analyze the objective which you had. If there are specific objective 4, analyze the 4. If there are 3, analyze the 3. Just as simple as that. So it depends. If you're going the descriptive, use the descriptive analysis. If you're deciding to go in the inferential, use the inferential analysis, so that your chapter 5 will come and speak to the summary of findings, discussions, conclusion, and recommendation in this format, the way it is. You do the introduction, just the way we have been working. Do your summary of findings. Even because of time, you can drop the summary of findings. You can drop the summary of findings, so that 5.2 will be the discussions of your results. Then, now do the discussion of each objective. You can do it in terms of the subtopic discussion or just in form of cross form. Then do your conclusion. Conclude what you have been doing in terms of the analysis. Then have 5.5, the recommendation. What are the recommendations that your study is putting forth? Then 5.6, do a suggestion for further research. Because how you're going to come up with topics, you're going to read through literature, and through those documents you're going to read, maybe theses, you'll find somebody is now suggesting, now the further of area of research, look at ABCD, and you can pick that as your topic of area. So for you, again, you need to do that, so that when somebody else is struggling to come up with topics, they can be having a simple way which has them been suggested to do. Then have a reference page. Then the appendix. Appendicize everything you're going to use. The data collection tool. If you're having a work plan, if you're having a budget, anything you're going to have, appendicize it. Then these are our conditions. You're going to use is New Times Roman. It's going to be double spaced. Font is going to be 12. Then justify your paragraph. I remember when I was doing my master's, another student was told, kindly justify your paragraph. She got so pissed. She got so much. She almost cried. This lecturer thinks this work is not mine. Why is she telling me to justify my work? it means just here at the icon where it's written justify. So it's not justifying your paragraph in sense like this is not your work. No, just justify by placing your arrow here and let all your margins be justified. Then you're going to use words between 6,000 to 8,000, the whole document. But if you go to 10,000, no penalties. So again, it depends on your supervisor. Some supervisors even they'll accept even 12,000. Then I failed to mention plagiarism. Plagiarism is accepted one is going to be less than. Let me be lenient, less than 20%. So anything above 20% is not accepted. It will amount to penalties, disqualification, and you know what it means. So plagiarism, less than 20%, which will be accepted. So my contacts in terms of email, that is my email. In terms of phone number, that is my phone number. You can reach me at any time of the day. So I was saying, I had already assigned you into groups. So before we kickstart, I want the 2 to 3 page concept note from each group so that we can approve the topic, so that we can give supervisor at an early stage as now. And what do we want to see in those concept notes? 1, we want to see the title. 2, we want to see the objective. And 3, we want to see the conceptual framework. Just as simple as that. Because once you sketch the 3, we know the direction you want to take. And it is at that initial stage that will give you the right person to work with you. If it's an HR topic, we'll give you an HR practitioner. So kindly groups do that. The 3-page document, concept note, could be even less, could be 2. So that your topic could be approved at that place before you move forward. So before you start crafting your chapter 1, let first your concept note be approved. Have a supervisor, then work with that supervisor. Because we'll find some of the supervisors prefer the conceptual framework in chapter 1. Some prefer them in chapter 2. So whatever we've discussed is just a template, but it's not cast on stone. You'll find maybe some of these supervisors will tell you in chapter 2, don't come up with theories, just work on the empirical. Again, don't say Mr. Mlama said it has to be theories. It's not cast on stone. It is just a format. Fewer, but majority of the supervisors will use this format. So you're in better hands. But just come up with a 3-page document of the concept note so that we can kickstart off the process. But along the way, any question regarding research, you could just contact me. With that, I say I think I'm done. Maybe I can hear to some questions before you call it a day. Yes, Florence Kefis.
Yes, thank you for that. My question is, after the concept note, are we still expected to do the proposal, or we go directly to the project, the research?
Yeah, from the concept note, when your concept note will be approved, either me or your supervisor will give you a go ahead to start now crafting now the proposal, the chapter 1, the chapter 2, and the chapter 3. But you've said don't do the 1, 2, 3 quickly, because you don't want to do it then taken back to the drawing board. Do your chapter 1, send that to your supervisor. Let him or her comment if it's okay, or there's any amendments to amend, so that he can give you a go ahead, or she can give you a go ahead to progress to the next chapter. But once you do the concept note is when now you'll start writing the proposal, the chapter 1, 2, and 3. So that after 3, you'll go to the field and collect data. Any other question? Yes, Anthony Kimngetich.
Thank you, sir. I have two questions.
Okay.
One of is about the citations. Some universities say that they only allow citations for maybe a certain year, like from 2017 to where we are. Some are saying from 2012. So I don't know to what limit are we expected to use in doing citations. And then number two, you've not talked about the seeking authority from NACOSTI before you embark on the data collection. Then number three is about the font size. When you began the topic, the presentation, you had talked about us using the single spacing, but at the end of the presentation, you talked about double space. So maybe you may clarify on the same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. I've heard you. Yeah, I forgot to mention, when you talk about citation, first of all, we are using APA. I don't know why it escaped my mind. We are using APA 6th edition in terms of citation to have both intake citation and list of references. Then the citation years, not less than 5 years, not more than 5 years. So if you're in 2021, if you're going way back in the days, don't go beyond 2016. Let it be 2016 to current date. But sometimes people argue, which is fine. Sometimes people argue you could be going way back, because when you're coming up with that maybe statement of problem, that issues trickle back in the days, which is still relevant. But when coming up with theories you can go even to 1930s. When coming up with theories, you're not limited to number of years, because theories have been there. But when you're talking about now, maybe your background, when you're talking about your empirical literature, let it be 5 years and below. Then the issue we've talked about, font size. The font size, I said, when you're working on the abstract is what you're going with the single space, 1.0. But from chapter 1 throughout, you're going to maintain 2. But it's not cast on stone. Some supervisors prefer 1.5. So if they tell you go with 1.5, the whole document, fine. But let your abstract and the document, let them be of separate font to be able to distinguish between the two. Now, we're not talking about data collection. You're not going the NACOSTI way in this case, because if you're going the NACOSTI way, there's the issue of charge, there's the issue of timings. Because when you apply your research in NACOSTI, it can take even up to 6 months. 6 months before it's acceptable. So in our case, we don't go the NACOSTI way. In our case, we just go approval. If you're doing an organization where they need approval, we can help you have the approval letter from the school. But we're not going the NACOSTI way, Mr. Anthony.
Okay. Thank you.
Karibu. Any other person who has a question? I presume the message is at home. We are 22 minus, as the facilitator, maybe we are 19. But I hope each group had 1 or 2 or 3 representatives in this class, so that once you're kickstarting the project, you can share the class notes and the class whatever we've discussed to them. Yes, Peter Washira. Peter Washira, I've seen your hand up. If you're talking, kindly unmute.
Yes. Sorry, I think I'm on and off. In terms of my internet, I'm asking, are you able to share that what template you are writing, probably in the group for our future reference?
Yes, I'll the way it is, I won't delete anything. I'll just save it, then I'll share with Elsie to share with in the WhatsApp group.
Thank you.
Karibu. Any other question? I'm seeing it's past 9. You guys have to eat. So with that, I can say maybe one of us to give us a closing prayer. And I say thank you for attendance.
So before that, allow me to know when is the deadline for the submission of the concept notes?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. The concept note now, it depends with you because you know the timings of your research, the time you're supposed to present until the last module. So when we are on Monday, because the quicker the better, because I'm so sure we are already late in the day. So today is on Monday. Let me have latest Thursday the concept notes, so that at least before the end of the week, chapter 1, a group has already finalized in the chapter 1. They're almost moving to chapter 2, because time is of essence and you are very late in the day. So make it Thursday. But if a group will have their concept ready as today, ready as tomorrow, once I approve, once the supervisor approve, work. Don't work with the other people. But the last group, submit kindly on Thursday to save on your time.
Okay, thanks.
If there's any question, fine. If there's, yeah, Jane Muya, go ahead, unmute your mic.
Yes, I'm asking.
Okay.
For the concept note, do we send direct to your email or when we send it?
Yeah, for the concept note, kindly send it to my email.
Okay, thank you.
Or even you can send it to my WhatsApp if you see I'm not responding to email, to that number, to the contact, either email or WhatsApp.
Thank you.
But again, the class president, you can add me to your group. So if there could be any research question, I could just be tackling it at that platform. I'm available and willing to join. So with that, Madam Jane, tuombe tufunge siku vizuri.
And Saomba. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you this far because we have seen your hand. Thank you for our facilitator who has taken us through that topic for the research. God, we pray that you will give us grace as we start the task, oh my Father. We pray that, God, you are going to see us through. As we break, taking our supper and sleeping, God, we pray that you guide us. It is in Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Amen.
Yeah. We can live at our own pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, all. Good night.
Good night.